have one.
Fully charged.
I would love to borrow.
Details are non-existent.
You just sit next to you and laugh. It's like all this camera exposure when you fire some inch cable. Man, all those guys. I can charge you rent, but it's like John Cradles or whatever.
That's my charger.
I was on my way. I figured I was kind of
They'll just say that.
Normally we have.
Are you ready? Okay, we will call the administrative committee to order, and before tonight is Bob Kennedy, who will be providing an update for us on our IT services. And of course, we'll have technology involved in that. This is in response to not only the routine update we're beginning every 6 months, but it was, some questions were raised during the budget season regarding some of the services being provided by IT. And so here's an opportunity for them to fill us in on all the exciting things that have been going on with our technology here at the county. And I will mention that for those of you who are accessing Word docs, there is information available there that's related to what Bob will be presenting that you can see, but not the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, actually, I was coming over to someone tonight to talk to Dave about getting it online, but he was busy, so I apologize for that.
Again, are you referencing the information that?
Was emailed out, it was emailed and distributed to, yeah.
5 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really following the PowerPoint, not necessarily that, so just kind of go over our IT. Bob Kennedy, Office of Information Technology. Strategic plan highlights. Admin's replacement continues to be the primary focus. One update that is new in the last 6 months is that our support partner is now able to support admins on OpenVMS past 2020. There were a number of Department of Defense and some other companies that were using OpenVMS that they were able to form an offshoot of HP to support OpenVMS. So the 2020 deadline is a little lax. It's not 2020 anymore. We're going to have a couple more years, so that's just a point of information. The budget impact is moving from capital investments to operational department funding. It's based on a build versus buy decisions as in the past. And state mandates handled by IT have continued to decrease, mainly due to the human services portion that we're spending a significant amount of time on. And the outlook is to continue to have additional time based on our human services programs being run by vendors. A couple items in general services in the past year. Our phone replacement system has now been completed. All of our major buildings are now on a new phone system. We have the ability to 4-digit dial throughout the county. We're continuing to combine physical phone lines and maintenance contracts to save price, save costs. We've migrated also our conference calling solution is fully now on the MyTel solution. With some of these phone line migrations and phone line consolidations, we've been able to save about $50,000 per year on our phone costs now that we have a centralized phone system. We have our retirement quote system that has been updated. We now have the ability to have county email or county accounts that do not have email accounts. This is mainly prevalent in the jail, in Cedar Brook, some other services where we've got people that aren't at a computer all day, they don't have a network account, so they're not able to return funds. We updated the program the last couple of months to allow allow that use. We've got over 100 users that are set up and registered and using that system, and we're continuing to roll that out throughout other departments like our MDJs and some other places. We've updated the parks and recreation field and pavilion scheduling. So now users are able to go online and request a soccer field pavilion. We're really getting hundreds of users using that system also. We continue with our wireless deployment. Wireless is being deployed in most of the common areas in the courthouse and the government center. That was a couple of capital plan items that we've had in the last couple of years. We're rolling out a new maintenance request system. That rollout is in progress. We started that in Cedar Brook. They were the first site to, Cedar Brook Maintenance Department was the first site to do that. We also have it in the jail. The jail maintenance system is using that. And we're rolling it out in the courthouse and government center right now. We're doing a couple of sites for wireless connectivity, basically in the basements where we don't have wireless. They're going to be using tablets and a new application that will allow them much easier use of using their system. That's another system that's coming off of old technology. We recently implemented the scanned images document repository. That was an old system that has all of our blueprints, whether it's the courthouse, the government center, Cedar Brook, all of our Coca-Cola Park, any bridges, all those scanned items are now easily searchable in our intranet. Our maintenance department is able to type in, a word, and type in Coca-Cola Park, and all the scans from that will show up, and they can look at that, and that's been a big help to our maintenance departments and also internal. As I said, we did updates to human services case management systems that were completed in 2017. We've made some enhancements to those systems. We updated the ASA system to be able to do OCYS safety forms. And in our Susquehanna CWIS or CPR web application, we're working on a proposal for Susquehanna to be able to do better address validation and standardization in the application. As I said, these two have really been the driver behind giving us a lot of additional time internally. A number of items in the nursing homes have been updated. Like I said, the maintenance work order system was an admin's replacement that was done at Cedar Brook first, and then we rolled it out to all the other departments. Earlier this month, we completed the upgrade of the SmartLinks time reporting system to their cloud system. In early September, we had a couple of successful payrolls on that new system. Nursing home support. We're continuing to do rotating IT support. We're also working with Cedar Brook on some disaster recovery planning and analyzing the technology needs at potential sites and use in a crisis situation. They rely much more heavily on IT than they had years ago when they had a disaster recovery plan. So we're just working with them to update that and make sure that any sites that they're going to go to will be ready for us to show up and use some of our point-of care applications on our wireless systems. And we're in the process right now of purchasing a new menu dietary system that will integrate with point-of care. Public Defender's case management system. I think Kim has talked to everyone about her satisfaction with that new system that went online early September. It's going to give them a lot more functionality than they have today. We also developed a domestic relations web check-in so that as people come in, they're able to check in and it does a workflow and it gives the people in domestic relations the notifications that people are waiting in the waiting room, so we're able to kind of stagger the work. We also updated the public information account systems. In the courts, we're in the process of doing an upgrade to our Odyssey system and also our Autobahn adult probation system. We have our domestic relations offices moving from the courthouse. They're moving to the courthouse from 6 to 7, so there's some network changes and obviously some PC work being done with that. We implemented a new guardian tracking system with the LPC. We've got a project started to implement additional technology in each of the courtrooms for some enhanced video conferencing technology. Order of deeds, install some credit card processing machines. Voter department support. We implemented a new campaign finance system that's ready for Tim to roll that out and to be used by the candidates to make it easier to put in your campaign finances rather than just scanning a document and sending it. Now you can go online. Tim will be rolling that out in the near future. We're also working with Tim on, in conjunction with his new voting systems that will be rolling out in the next year. We've been working with the state on some test system. They've been testing our systems for vulnerabilities by the state of PA's technical group. Lehigh County was one of only 2 systems to achieve passing scores. And we participated, along with Tim, participated in multiple cybersecurity tabletop exercises at PEMA for the voter systems. I was actually out at PEMA this afternoon for another tabletop exercise. District Attorney Case Management System, we're starting to review DA case management systems. We're doing that in conjunction with looking at potential new police RMS systems. And then jail management system is an initiative that will be starting next year. Continuing to work with 911 on an upgrade of their computer-aided dispatch system, and also working with them on the consolidation of the Allentown and Lehigh County 911 centers. We made a couple of network infrastructure upgrades. We're also doing a project right now to look at some cloud services. We're looking at this pilot solution for large lines of video storage. We have a number of initiatives going on that we've got to store huge amounts of video storage. So we're working with a partner to see if it's the best solution for that is going to be a cloud solution. Security enhancements, we've been making a number of security enhancements. We're working on training users with our security awareness training program that we've implemented. We performed a baseline assessment countywide. We're going to use the results of the baseline assessment to start pushing some training based on how people did with that baseline assessment. The first group of people that we're working with this week are the users in the election department. So they'll all be getting some additional security awareness training. We deployed a couple other technologies like the web application firewall. We put all of our websites behind that now. We're evaluating some multi-factor authentication solutions. When you're the goal of that is when you're off-site and not connected or connected to the county, you'll have an additional level of security, much like you use today for all your banking, credit card, and other logins that you have from personal information. So that kind of mirror those solutions. We're performing regular vulnerability assessment tests that are administered by Homeland Security. And we're also integrating security testing with our development person. We're implementing that with our development lifecycle. So as we're developing these new applications, security is now just part of the process. A number of GIS items that we've got in place. We recently performed a countywide image capture using photometry. We recently received our change finder information that is going to look at any changes of the images from 2011 until 2018. We'll do some analysis and we'll go through and see what information has changed. We'll take that information, put one to our assessment system, make sure that if somebody added a building, it's reflected in our assessment. And we'll be getting training on that by photometry sometime next month. Worked with the Census Bureau to perform our local update of census data. There'll be a census coming out, and there's a number of things that we need to do to verify the data in our assessment system for that. Also, we're working with the Emergency Management Department on kind of an emergency preparedness exercises so that to make sure that they have access to all the technology. Our GIS system has a range of technologies that can assist in a disaster or even during disaster planning. So we're meeting with emergency services and general services on that. We're also working with municipalities on potential address issues for NextGen 911. NextGen 911 is heavily looking at GIS and technology that we haven't really been using to that extent with 911. There's a lot of address issues in our municipalities that will need to get changed. Just a summary, we've completed our public defender system, our maintenance request system, and scanned image document systems that have all come off admins and are on new systems. And, a number of items in progress. Our Cedar Brook menu dietary is being procured right now. We've done some assessment system analysis. We're starting to analyze what that system will look like in the future. And then next year we'll start the general manager system. Also, we've met kind of informally Commissioner Holt in the hallway today. So one of the things she wanted to talk about is some of the training initiatives that we have in IT. And we do provide a number of executive oversight and mentoring on a regular basis. We regularly encourage our employees kind of to take the initiative and personal responsibility to take some training courses. We've offered opportunities to take training in particular areas of expertise. For example, we send people to GIS Esri training, people have point-of care administration training, Microsoft programming, specific areas like SQL Server, VMware. We also have an online training system that we partnered with a product called Pluralsight that a good majority of our IT users are using. We also encourage people to take advantage of the many training opportunities that are available directly from the county. Our county HR department has a number of training classes that they do every month. I'm sure everyone in the county gets notified that things like performance management, leadership training, managing multiple priorities, things like that. We've also encouraged people to kind of take ownership of their own personal training and make sure that they're taking advantage of the things that the county offers. There's formal education that the county offers. We've got a number of people that have gone back to get their bachelor's of science degree, or we have a couple of people right now that are in the process of getting their master's degree from DeSales, and I think the last one signed up for an online class at Georgia Technology. So we've got a number of initiatives. We also invited our team to participate in a number of Lehigh Valley training opportunities that are offered to us both by Computer Aid offers training that we invite our people to. We've had some people take advantage of that. We have a number of areas like the Chamber of Commerce and some other things downtown that are offering training. So we've had a number of people take advantage of that.
Very thorough. That was very thorough. I mean, not that there are any questions. That was very thorough, and I appreciate you.
And I'll have this presentation to date tonight, and
Yeah, and then get uploaded for public. Are there? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. A question that I had, and since we have Ms. Lucky back here in the audience as well, when I attended this session with Auditor General Pasquale, one of the concerns that was brought up by the Human Services case workers was the frustration with having to come back to the office, fill out so many paperwork items. And I'm just wondering, we've made any progress with the IT department where they can fill some of those items out in the field with the computer to get the caseworkers spending more time?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a number of initiatives in Human Services that, as they're getting these different tools and technologies, they're all available. I mean, a high number of people now have laptops, and they have wireless access points where they're able to work in the field. And there's they're able to access their applications on their laptops and do pretty much anything traveling that they could do in the office.
So as a follow-up, has that been an improvement that was made since those discussions, or was that something that was available to them prior to those discussions? The discussions that your staff had, their frustrations with having to come back to the office and, fill out all the paperwork, and there was a meeting to do some computer honest.
There was a meeting with the auditor
Yes.
general. So the question is, were those improvements since the meeting with the auditor general?
I mean,
And they had not, yeah, they were sent.
So it is-
I mean, there's been a continual, and I know Kay and her group have had a continual process of improving and making sure that people are aware that they can do all these things. I think that's been an ongoing thing, so.
Okay, yeah.
I'm
Mr.
not
Roberts.
sure.
Just you mentioned for all commissioners' benefit, the negotiation committee is looking into this also, and this is something that has been brought up in the negotiations with the union. So it's ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other comments? I will highlight for the board, especially those that are new, the email archiving that was mentioned is a conversation that occurred a couple years ago at this point in time, and there was a lack of agreement then on how to proceed with that between the administration and board, and there was concerns raised about just how record keeping is occurring. So just want to make sure that the board kind of has on their radar that this is an issue that has somewhat of a deadline to it, and so I plan on working with the administration to try to help facilitate some kind of solution to that, and making sure that we're in agreement moving forward so that we can address it in a timely manner. But I just want to make sure that's on everyone's radar and aware of the history there. Is there any other, yes, Mr. Alvin?
Yes, I've asked you this before, and I'll ask it again. In terms of the GIS with the change detection, you mentioned that this is still being done by pictometry. I thought this was something that would be brought in-house by now.
No, pictometry change finder is something that will systematically go through 150,000 plus parcels and compare pictures from one picture to another and do an analysis on what has changed. And it would take multiple people a long time to be able to do what the change finder analysis is doing.
No, but you can do a simple band ratio on the data and do the same thing without going to the outside.
Yes. This was something that has been included in our contract. We've done it one time before. We kind of said we're going to do that every 6 years. It is a little more complicated than comparing two pictures using
I used to have my students do it all the time, so it's not that complicated.
Well, if you can get people to come in here and do it for us for free, so we can talk about that.
Ask these students if you fail. If they'll go up exponentially.
Hearing no other questions, thank you so much for the update and congratulations on all the accomplishments. I mean, I particularly remember what you mentioned about the network system and that it achieved the highest, or one of the 2 highest ratings in the state. To me, is a testament to the excellent work being done here in the county. So that's wonderful to hear. So thank you so much for the update.
Thank you. Obviously, it's not me. I'm giving the update for my team.
I should clarify, yes, not just you, but the entire team and
I'm the spokesman.
every employee who helps make that happen, because these things, the systems don't work. I've called the help desk myself, so the systems don't always work, and the team's very responsive and working to do all the things better.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that concludes the items for the administrative committee. We're adjourned.
What's that? Shirt still on? It's all okay. Yeah. You wouldn't see me there.
All right, I'll call the governance committee to order at 6:48. On the agenda for tonight is a motion to appoint outside counsel for the reasoning. Hold on, here, let me get this up. It's pursuant to Section 407B of the Home Rule Charter. I move that the county solicitor be authorized to hire Michael Goff as outside counsel for the purpose of handling specific legal matters for the Office of Children and Youth Services. Hello, Sarah.
Thank you. Sarah Murray, County Solicitor. When this was originally brought up, we had two matters that were both involving the Bureau of Hearings and Appeals, which is an administrative appeal process involving the expungement of child abuse reports. And just this week, a third matter has arisen, which we are seeking state counsel to represent. This is a dependency case, and basically we need an attorney to review the matter and take it to court if necessary. All three of these matters involve conflicts of interest. Basically, there's county employees who have an existing relationship with people involved in the case. Not directly, but some sort of relationship, family generally, with people involved in the case, and therefore it would be a conflict for our children and youth attorneys to handle these matters. So, Carrie Friedel, who is the attorney for children and youth, has reached out to Michael Goff, who is willing to take these matters on. He is highly recommended by Attorney Friedel, and that is why we're moving forward to tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there any questions from the board members, from committee members? Any questions from the full board? Any questions from the public regarding this? Hearing none, is there a motion to appointment of outside counsel Michael Goff?
I would recommend the motion. Thank you.
All right, with a positive recommendation. I'll second. All right, there's a second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda was from 2 weeks ago. It was a motion for outside counsel Paul Weiss. If everyone remembers, this was regarding the lead paint removal. Just wanted to circle back around. We deferred this just last meeting. We also, from the committee, it was a 3-1 vote for positive recommendation as well. I know that we had some questions needed to be answered. Was everybody satisfied with their questions being answered? By any chance, this is to the members and to the full board?
My concerns have been ameliorated.
Commissioner Holt?
I would say that there was a lot of information shared. This is a really busy time for the commissioner board, and so I have not had time to read through all. I mean, there's a 144-page report that was sent. I haven't had time to fully delve into all the information that was shared to see if my concerns have been fully addressed. And at this moment in time, I still have outstanding concerns about what's being proposed.
Okay.
I was the only one who voted no on deferring this at our last meeting, and I was content then. I didn't say why I was content at the time, but I should say that the reason I was ready for this to move forward as it was presented, because I'm increasingly cognizant after a full term that county government functions in these situations where we've got significant social problems that pop up, that we function as the setting of last resort. We have to deal with all of the outcomes that come from things like public health crises, and we're talking about the opioid epidemic. We can talk about the public health issues that lead poisoning causes, everything from, early intervention services that our Human Services Department provides to children and youth, so on and so forth. And while we're the setting of last resort, meaning that we're the last ones to touch the problem, we have to implement the solutions, the human service solutions. We're the setting that's least able to react to it. We can't set the policies that help drive solutions to it. And so we're left holding the basket, so to speak, the bag of problems and costs. So I think it's incumbent upon us, just as Jim Martin brought forward litigation that would allow, from his perspective and from the county's perspective, the opportunity to address a problem associated with the opioid epidemic. I think it's incumbent upon us to try and do the same when we're dealing with problems associated with lead poisoning. With any type of problem that we can say we don't set the policies that affect the problems that we have, but we have to deal with them. Our citizens have to deal with them. This is by far more activist approach to government than what I've seen. I thank the solicitor and Department of Law, the administration for bringing this forward. But I'm frankly tired as a county legislator being stuck in a position where we can't effectively and proactively address problems that we face. We have to do it reactively. So yeah, we're talking about litigation, and frankly, I think it's the last reactive thing that we can do for this situation.
Thank you, Commissioner Brace. Anyone else? Anyone in the public would like to comment on this?
Again, Sarah Murray, County Solicitor. Just in case there are any questions that anyone wants to address tonight, David Senoff of Anna Weiss and Colleen McCauley of Public Citizens for Children and Youth have both joined us again this evening. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Since they are here, does anyone have any questions for them directly? All right, hearing none. Oh, hi. Why don't you just give us a quick update?
I apologize. I'll give you a quick update. We are this week going to send a draft of complaint to Delaware County. Once they approve it, in the event that they, sign the necessary paperwork to approve the complaint, we would file it. Once it's in the public domain, I don't have any problem sharing it with any of the commissioners, so you can actually see what we're talking about. But in advance of that, I put together some copies of the advertising that we've reproduced in the complaint that was done by the lead paint industry going back to as far as we could go back and research, so that members of the council can see exactly that the paint was marketed to children. You say to yourself, well, how could paint be marketed to children? They had, they're Dutch Boy, Sherwin-Williams, PPG, NL Industries, all created comic books with cute characters reminiscent of Joe Camel. Nothing in this world is new, right? Everything is simply recycled. Where there are very cute children painting their walls, and the children are advised to tell their parents to go out and buy white lead paint because it's healthier, it's easier to clean the germs off the wall when you get fingerprints on it, it converts your dingy room into a bright room. And so these are the kinds of reasons. This is the sort of the background of how this all happened. And in the complaint, once it's filed, and I'll send it to council, you'll see that while they were having this ad campaign, and by the way, these ads appeared 67 million times in print over a course of about a 10 or 15 year period in various publications, you'll see that what they said to themselves within the industry, and this is all public information, was that they had done a good job in allaying the public's concern about lead poisoning in relation to lead paint. And So I will leave you with that, and I will just say that in addition, in performing some research for the Delaware County complaint, I did come across a Pennsylvania Supreme Court case. There were a lot of cases litigated in the 90s after the Lead Paint Control Act in Pennsylvania was passed over whether or not homeowners insurance companies had to cover lead paint damage and remediation, or whether lead paint was covered under a exclusion for pollution, right? And ultimately, the courts ruled consistently, state and federal, that these insurance companies didn't owe any money. However, during the course of those cases, every single court that addressed the issue found that, including the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and most recently Chief Justice Saylor, found that, one, the most common cause of lead poisoning is the paint, as Colleen said, I think the last time we were here. Two, it takes a long time because you have to wait for the paint to dry out, ship, and for people to ingest it or inhale the dust. And three, that even the smallest amount of lead paint, less than, I think it's 5, I forget what it is, micrograms per deciliter in the blood, was sufficient enough to cause problems. And in fact, the smaller the amount, there was just as bad damage. So it wasn't as if the damage geometrically progressed, but that the damage was there even in such a small amount. So if you'd like, I can hand them up. And then, if anybody wants to meet privately about issues, whatever the case may be, I'm certainly available to answer any questions. I will say this, in addition to that, the Pennsylvania County Code does provide that, particularly in counties of the third class with boards of health, that, for example, the Board of Health is permitted to go ahead and abate public nuisances. In the absence of a Board of Health, in home rule counties of the third class, the council is empowered to take on those duties in the event that the county hasn't created its own separate Board of Health. So I think there was a question last week about whether or not the county or the council had the authority or the power to authorize such a lawsuit. I don't think, having read those statutes, that there can be any question that the council can certainly act through the court system in order to abate a public nuisance. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Also, I just want to remind everyone that that the contract with them would be, if there would be an award given, it would be 33 to 30% to the firm, and also plus expenses. Also, just for some information, about 9,023 homes are built with lead paint. This would, about 52% of them are required to get remediated, and it costs about $8,269 to remove each home, so the paint that is. So I just wanted to give some information out there for the public and for also full board here. Hearing that, I don't think there's anything for us to do. It's already on the agenda for full board. I'll call or ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Start this evening, I'd like to take a minute or two for a special presentation. One of our Lehigh County employees that was really a bedrock to the Board of Commissioners. We want to congratulate and commend her, Val, on 10,000 days of service and dedication to the County of Lehigh. So we have a plaque here for you, or a certificate. If you'd like to come up, 10,000 days.
lot easier and help us get through some tough times and give us incredible amounts of information. So thank you, Val. We do appreciate it. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 26, 2018 meeting of Lehigh County Board of Commissioners. And before we get started, I'd like to ask our clerk to please take the roll.
Commissioner Briggs. Here. Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Doherty.
Here.
Commissioner Graham. Here. Commissioner Nothstein.
Here.
Commissioner Hartzell.
Here.
Commissioner Holt.
Here.
Commissioner Osborne.
Here.
And Commissioner Zanelli.
Here.
9 present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded for the public record. Also at this time, if you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, have there been any executive sessions held since our last meeting?
Yes, prior to tonight's meeting, the board met in executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Thank you. Consideration of the September 26th board minutes has been deferred to the October 10th meeting. We will move on to citizens input. At this time, I'd like to give anyone an opportunity to address the board on a non-agenda item.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Jane Briggs of Allentown. As budget time is fast approaching, I wanted to take a few moments to say something that I don't think you all hear often enough, and that's thank you. I wanted to thank each of you for continuing to fund Cedar Brook Nursing Home so it can be a 5-star facility for residents in Lehigh County. 7 years ago, my grandfather entered Cedar Brook as a dementia patient who had just fallen and broke his hip at another facility. The care he received through rehabilitation was wonderful, and he continued to live there for 7 years. Unfortunately, he passed away a few weeks ago. One of the first things that my grandmother wanted to do was to personally thank each and every nurse that cared for him. They became family to her, and they were her social circle when she went to visit him every single day. She wanted each nurse to get something from the heart because they spent hours and hours together, and my grandmother got to know each of them like a family member. The fact that a county-operated nursing home provides that type of environment is amazing to me. But the care and compassion wasn't just in the nursing staff. When my uncle passed away a few years ago as the only power of attorney for my grandfather, it was the administrative staff that jumped into action for my family. They showed sympathy first for the tragedy, and then figured out what needed to be done so everything was in place as it was before. They took charge of the situation so my family could grieve my uncle and not have to worry about paperwork and what needed to be signed. I used to visit Cedar Brook as a child when my great-grandmother was a patient there, and I hope that if the need were to ever arise, that my parents would need care, that Cedar Brook will be around for many future generations to come. Thank you for listening, and thank you for continuing to fund improvements to the facility and wages for workers that make them want to go to work and provide top-notch care to the most vulnerable in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Grace, and I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for your kind words. Anybody else?
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address the Board of Commissioners. My name is Giovanni Landi from Emmaus. I am the chairman for the Lehigh County Republican Committee, and I'm here to speak with you this evening and convey the committee's position on the $5 car fee. The Lehigh County Republican Committee adopted on September 12, 2018, a formal position to oppose the yearly $5 car fee proposed by Lehigh County Executive Armstrong. After reviewing data showing Lehigh County and local municipalities have sufficient funds for road and bridge maintenance, the committee voted to oppose this money grab by the Democrat County Executive Armstrong. The county and municipalities are provided yearly funding for bridge and road maintenance through one of the highest liquid fuel taxes in the country. Asking residents to provide additional money through yet another funding scheme seems not only repetitive, but also unnecessary, as current funds designated for road and bridge repairs are not completely expended. Additionally, when municipalities vote to allow additional construction of warehouses and housing developments, which cause increased demand for road maintenance, then these municipalities should be responsible for their own decisions. It is not only unfair to ask the residents of surrounding municipalities to pay for the bad decisions of other municipalities, it is also immoral. For these reasons, the members of the Lehigh County Republican Committee urge all of the Lehigh County
commissioners to stand with county residents and reject this money grab by County Executive Armstrong. We also encourage all citizens, no matter which political affiliation, to oppose this money grab as well. Personally, I have attended a few commissioner meetings over the past several months when this topic was discussed. My question for you is, have you heard from anyone who is in favor of this new fee besides people in government and upper middle class Democrats from the suburbs? I have discussed this with many people and not one person I asked was in favor of this fee. There are many reasons to oppose this fee. I will touch on just a few. First, it is unnecessary. Second, it is not the role of the county. And third, it hits the poor in our community. When I say it is unnecessary, I don't mean our roads and bridges are not in need of repair. Anyone who lives in Pennsylvania knows our roads are not the best. I say it's unnecessary because municipalities do not spend all liquid fuels funds they receive each year. The board should consider what exactly the role of the county should be in relation to this fee. Is it the responsibility of the county to be revenue collectors for the municipalities? I don't think so. I believe the county should stick to the core functions which fall under the county's responsibility. Collecting money from municipality roads is not a core function of county government. By collecting these fees, the county is adding an additional layer of bureaucracy between the taxpayers and their local municipalities. At a previous meeting, I remember a gentleman coming here to discuss this topic. I think he was here from someone from the board in Whitehall. He said he didn't trust the state to distribute funds, and in the interest of promoting smaller government with more local control, we should have the county implement this. I also believe we should have more local control. But in this case, that would mean municipalities should be raising the required revenues for road repairs from their residents. Don't let municipalities get away with poor planning by passing the cost of those repairs onto other municipalities. Let them go back to their residents and be held accountable. As for impacting the working poor in the county, I appreciate the gesture made by County Executive Armstrong to give up a Starbucks coffee to pay this fee. However, many people who will be paying this fee can't afford overpriced coffees. This fee will hit people who are working hard to keep a car and some independence. It's bad enough these people pay one of the highest gas taxes, if not the highest gas tax in the country. Now on top of that, the county wants to find another scheme to extract money from them. A fee which can be used for non-infrastructure projects like trails. While some have claimed the poor would not be affected by this, my opinion differs. The cutoff range for this fee will affect anyone who works full-time making more than $9.50 an hour. I know for years I've been hearing people on the left claim that $15 an hour is a living wage. Oddly, it seems these same people have no problem driving into the city from their nice suburban homes to demand you institute another fee on people that make less than $15 an hour. Based on these reasons, I ask you to vote against this fee when it comes before the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lindy, if you have a copy of those remarks, we'll include them in tonight's record.
Joe Lewis, South Allentown. I gathered the data through Right to Knows. Juggling 24 Right to Knows is a difficult task indeed. Quick review of Act 89. It is the highest gas tax in the nation. Now, going through this process, I learned a lot of interesting things. One is the board, or even the administration aware that if the price of gas, wholesale gas gallon goes below $2.99, let's say it goes to 50 cents one year, it's still taxed like it's $2.99. Interesting fact. License and registration fees were increased a lot. Let's talk about the working poor. I learned in Act 89, starting next year, there's a built-in automatic inflationary increase every year. Is the board or the administration aware of that? So again, it's not just the $5, it's these factors. There's talk about hiking property taxes. I mean, come on, it's got to stop at some point. Some of the reasons given, electric vehicles and increased miles per gallon are not providing enough money to the liquid fuels fund. We'll get to that in a second. Municipalities need more funding to fix their roads. That's why the roads aren't getting fixed. Myth.
Municipalities are victims of development and the county should help. Again, myth, because they're responsible for their development. Let's talk about liquid fuel funds. Allocations from the liquid fuel fund from 2012 to 2017 has steadily grown. It's up 42% since 2012. That's a lot greater than the rate of inflation, I believe. I'll run that number eventually as well. And by the way, with this, I estimate 3 municipalities simply got the prior year's funding, because I'm still missing some information. I'm in a couple right-to-know appeals, but I was able to get other information through the annual financial report submitted to the Community and Economic Development Department. So I just assumed their funding stayed flat for those 3 municipalities. Every other municipality had basically a 16% increase. So that number, 42%, that's going to go way over 50. So apparently there's not that many electric cars driving down the gas tax. Fund balances have grown. They've grown over 48% since 2012. Again, I'm missing 3 municipalities. I don't know what their 2017 ending fund balances are yet. So that number is going to be well over 50% growth. Now, if there's a shortage of money, why is the fund balance grown for all the municipalities combined well over 50%? And by the way, they go up for every municipality. I'm just doing the aggregate here. I can run these numbers for any specific municipality if anybody wants it. It's all in the database now, except some of the bits of information I'm missing. And I have a spending breakdown. Basically, 44% is spent on roads and bridges. Next biggest is street cleaning and winter plowing, salt, stuff like that. Well, we live in Pennsylvania, and that's 31 cents on the dollar. The next biggest at 17% is traffic control and lighting. Basically, most of that is PP&L electric bills for the street lights. However, in the Local Tax Enabling Act, any municipality can propose and pass a streetlight tax. Some of them have. Now, if every municipality did that, they could increase the money going to roads and bridges by a 40% increase. Because again, roads and bridges is 44. You take the 17%, that's a 40% increase for that part of the pie, a nice little pie chart. So again, this is a money grab. That's all it is. And in fact, the total fund balances for all the municipalities is $6.6 million. When I throw in the other 3, I bet you it's going to be close, if not over $10 million. And this is supposed to raise $1.5 million a year. That's 6-7 years of funding they have on their own already. When that's depleted, maybe we discuss this again. But again, their liquid fuels keeps going up and blah, blah, blah. This isn't even a philosophical argument. I cannot wait to go to the voters, especially for members of my own party. They raised a tax that wasn't even needed. The roads aren't being fixed because of a lack of priorities and management. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Would anybody else like to address the board on a non-agenda item this evening?
Mike Graham, Center Valley. Didn't have enough time to do the research I would like to, but correct me if I'm wrong, anyone here in the crowd or in the board. The New Jersey tolls, the turnpike, those tolls were supposed to expire after a certain period of time, which I think was back in the 1950s, was it not? Something like that. I'm not a historian on turnpikes, but I can assure you, if you do an internet search right now, you'll pick up, you'll pop up things where it talks about the tolls increasing, not being, eliminated. So once this thing gets started, it's going to be just like the tolls on the turnpike. It's never going to go away, and it will go up.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Anybody else? Last call for an opportunity to address the board on a non-agenda item. Okay, moving along, we have nothing under chair's review. There were no appointments scheduled for tonight's agenda, so we get right into old business, Bill 2018-26. Mr. Clerk, would you introduce tonight's first bill, please?
Commissioner Bill 2018-26, amending 2018 through 2022 Lehigh County Capital Plan to
to include the purchase of video conferencing equipment for the Lehigh County Courthouse, sponsored by Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
By this ordinance, the Board of Commissioners amends the 2018 to 2022 capital plan. The purpose of the amendment is to include video conferencing equipment to support 4 criminal courtrooms in the Lehigh County Courthouse. The Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts will be reimbursing the county for the purchase of this equipment, and a description of the project is attached to the ordinance's Exhibit A.
Thank you. Sponsor comments, Commissioner Doherty.
The solicitor covered this pretty well, but the total cost of the project is $35,848, of which the grant that's coming in will be $34,000. So that leaves the county with paying $1,848 out of our cash. So this is a major improvement to the courthouse at minimal cost to the local taxpayers.
Thank you, Commissioner Doherty. Any other commissioner comments? Any public input on the bill? All those in favor of approving Commissioner Bill 2018-26, please say aye.
Aye.
Bill passes. Moving on to new business. Mr. Clerk, please introduce the motion necessary to appoint outside counsel.
Pursuant to Section 407B of the Home Rule Charter, I move that the county solicitor be authorized to hire Michael Goff as outside counsel for the purpose of handling specific legal matters for the Office of Children and Youth Services.
Thank you. Someone would like to make the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by, was that Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Hull? Any commissioner comments on the motion? Any public input? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion moves forward. Mr. Clerk, introduce the motion related to outside legal counsel with regards to Resolution 2018-51, please.
Pursuant to Section 407B of the Lehigh County Home Rule Charter, I move that the county solicitor be authorized to hire the law firm of Annapol Weiss to serve as counsel for the county of Lehigh, county in parentheses, relating to the county's claims against paint manufacturers for losses associated with lead paint.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for the, do I hear a motion? So moved. Motion by Commissioner Gray, second.
Second.
By Commissioner Brown. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Hull.
I have concerns with the motion and the subsequent legislation that goes with it. In the limited time that we've been given to review this, I mean, the administration's been looking at this since June. We've only really had this before since 2 weeks ago. But in that limited time, from what I can see, I'm not convinced that this is necessarily the route to go. Clearly, there is an issue out there, but when I read some of the information we've been provided, Chicago and New York had made really good strides in reducing lead exposure in their areas, and neither one of those 2 cities went this route. And so I don't understand why we aren't necessarily exploring other avenues. Other information that was provided mentioned that localities should work to make lead paint hazard control financially accessible by offering low-interest loans or other kinds of incentives. We haven't necessarily explored those options either, and we're jumping right to the point of deciding to go and authorize litigation against the manufacturers. And I feel like that kind of going to the extreme when information that's been provided to us indicates there may be other paths forward, other ways that people have been working to address this issue. I think we're kind of rushing into this. We should take more time to review this particular issue. And there's no guarantee that this will even be successful in California. It was 20 years of litigation, which finally ended up in a successful award, which is now being brought before the U.S. Supreme Court and being considered whether the U.S. Supreme Court will hear this. So it's not even a done deal necessarily with the one of the pieces of litigation that has been moving forward. And in response to the favorable award in California, the response was to introduce legislation, if you will, or referendums, I should say, that would have negated the decision. And so, to me, there's just a whole lot of uncertainty here. There's a lot more to look at, and so for that reason, I do not believe we should move forward with this motion at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Hull. Commissioner Grace.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll start broadly, and then come back to the concerns that Commissioner Holt raised, and I welcome deliberation on that if it's appropriate. I'm of the mind that county government is often the setting of last resort. I made some of these comments in our governance committee meeting, but for the general public, we often get left holding the bag for problems that come about in our community, whether it be the opioid crisis, whether it be lead paint issues that create a host of problems for human service delivery. We were talking about the Human Services Department on Monday evening and all the services that are provided through that department. Many of the services are in part, not totally, in part necessitated by the presence of lead in our in homes, which, as we've come to learn in our conversations through this process, the biggest contributor to that, and I don't know that there's actually a public policy dispute about this or a legal dispute about this, but the biggest source of that is lead paint in homes, primarily because of aged housing stock. So while we're the setting of last resort, we hold the bag for these problems, we're the last resort in that we have no power to actually do something to prevent these things from becoming community problems. We have to address an opioid problem in our community because policy failures have come about. We can't change the laws. We can't go outside of our limited scope of responsibilities to address it, other than to deal with incarceration, deal with deaths that happen in our community, the rising costs of a coroner's office, all these things. We have no recourse. And I applaud the legal department for finding ways, and I applaud the Martin District Attorney for finding ways to think about how can we actively take steps to address these problems. And litigation, as unseemly as it might be in many instances, is a course that we can take. And under state law, we believe, and I don't know that there's much dispute to this, but we have some recourse that we can follow. To address Commissioner Holt's points about efforts in other cities and other policy options, the efforts in those communities have been made through funding that was available to them from other settings, federal government, state government. And to some degree, we've had that, our taxpayers have had that available to them, either through the city of Allentown or through the Department of Health, but on a very limited and increasingly diminished basis. Additionally, things like the incentives you described, low interest loans, again, these were all set up through funds that those settings of government had available to them because of that. Lehigh County, as best as I can tell, with the exception of our home remediation program, which the director of DCD and some of his staff gave us an overview of how that program works, we have very few resources available to do what those communities have done, and they're not dedicated sources that those communities have enjoyed because they're direct entitlement communities. If we want to do something, we need resources. We can't just make a low-interest loan program materialize out of thin air. Yes, it's a pie in the sky, a long road that we would have if we were successful. Most of us probably wouldn't be on the Board of Commissioners, although Commissioner Doherty has a track record of bringing that on, and when this is all said and done. I'm willing to put that out now, knowing that 20 years from now, a problem that has been acknowledged by public policy and by the courts as a contributed public health issue with causes that can be clearly identified. I'm willing to make that investment right now, knowing that a generation later, there might be public benefit. I have no other answers. I don't think the county has any other answers available. I'm willing to roll the dice. It's a contingency contract if we do approve it after the motion. It's not a personal injury case in the sense that we've discussed with other personal injury cases. You know, I'm at a loss for how we can address the 9,000 some houses in our county and the needs they have. Because outside of the city of Allentown, there's no remediation being done. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Brace. Any other commissioner comments? Any of us public? Commissioner Doherty.
Yes, this is quite a perplexing problem, because I think all of us up here on the board agree that lead is a major problem. And we have seen many studies over the years showing how important it is, especially for children, to be in a healthy environment. And as Commissioner Brace mentioned, we do have limited work in this in terms of our Department of Economic Development Office giving out some minor grants for fixing up housing. But we need more money there. But the problem that I have with this is that this is similar to what has been mentioned earlier this evening in terms of the opioid problem. That is something that the county should not have been involved in. This is something that Joshua Shapiro, the state attorney general, should have been pushing, and that's the take that the County Commissioners Association is taking. So the state is not doing its job in the opioid problem. It's not doing its job in terms of lead paint. There should be legislation there and funding that comes down to the county to support the amelioration of these problems. And this is also, we heard about the $5 fee today. This is just another attempt by the state to pass on its responsibilities to the counties. And this often comes as an unfunded mandate in other cases. So this is passing the buck down to us. And I look at this as another attempt there. At least in this case, we are not going to be out any money, but I think I agree with Commissioner Holt. I would like to see a little more time so that we can look at some of the other programs around the country and see what works and what does not work, and possibly come back to the legal question here and maybe hire this particular firm when we see what is happening with the lawsuits in the other counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Doherty. Any other commissioner comments? Any public input on the motion?
Commissioner Sinali.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I believe that we have, again, something to usually waste time and wait and damage to children. So for all the reasons that Commissioner Brace mentioned, I will be in support of this.
Commissioner Brace.
My final comment, I've used everybody's time. We've also filed a lawsuit to try and recover 911 fees that we feel we're due. We have obligations to our taxpayers and to our citizens. When somebody is not doing their job, and we have the power to do something, we should do it.
Commissioner Holt.
I would just add that with the 911, we did contemplate that for 2 or 3 years before we moved forward with it. It was certainly not something that we looked into, and this is potentially a 20-year timeline that we're looking at. And so to me, taking another couple months to review this is not a huge act.
Commissioner Doherty.
Final comment, this proves my point in terms of saying the state should be leading the charge in all these cases, even the 911, because what we end up with is paying a law firm 33 1/3% of any settlement plus expenses on top of that. So the amount of money that comes through is greatly reduced, and the amount of money going to people who need this is greatly reduced.
Thank you, Commissioner Doctor. Last call, Commissioner comment and public input. Public input on the motion.
If I may, David Senon from Manifold Voice, let me just say a couple of brief comments. First of all, taking the last comment first, yes, there's a contingency fee, but in addition, you'll note that the contract says that in the event that fees are awarded by the court, that those fees would be set off against the county's portion, which means essentially that if we win and the court awards fees, that the county will not be responsible. There has never been any attempt by my firm, myself, or anyone else involved in this project to do this on any other basis than a contingency, because we wouldn't want to further burden the county's resources by charging traditionally by the hour, which would either equate to or eclipse the amount that might ultimately be awarded by the court for fees and costs. Secondly, with regard to the difference between lead paint and the opioid crisis, in 1995, the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed the Pennsylvania Lead Act. In that act, the General Assembly found that lead poisoning and lead paint was a public health hazard constituting a public nuisance. I agree, the state did nothing to help abate that nuisance. However, the county code specifically permits county council and counties of the third class and counties with home rule charters to go ahead and institute legal proceedings, specifically legal proceedings to abate the public nuisances. So the idea that litigation is foreign to abating public nuisance, I think is not the same here as it may have been in other cases. And finally, I'll just say with regard to California, yes, it took 20 years, but the reason why it took 20 years had more to do with the identification of the defendants, who were going to be the plaintiffs. Ultimately, the referendum that Commissioner Holt spoke about was struck down. The United States Supreme Court did not take that case. The United States Supreme Court has not taken an appeal yet on that case, and one of the defendants has already settled that case in advance of the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court's decision in the amount of $60 million. And the Supreme Court, should it take it, will be limited solely to the question of whether or not the verdict that was rendered was simply too high, not whether the case itself should have been properly or improperly brought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
John Nothstein Lehigh has a couple backup things for it. As a contractor going out to, remodel homes or whatever, build whatever. If I go into some place, I'm not going to remodel with a window put in. I have to test the paint, see if there's any lead problems with it, and then proceed according to all the rules and regulations that are set down by the government. If I do that without all the permits and everything, it's $33,500 a day fine. That's one inspector a year. So that drives all kinds of small business out. It's hard to afford this. You have to be certified to do all this. It's like a hazmat thing. So there's all kinds of costs away. And anytime the government puts money into something, prevailing wage. No doubt about it. So now there is no question. That's what happens. There's a dollar of any kind of government money in it, it's prevailing wage cost. So you can't get like the private guys who come in and do the work. We'll do it cheaper, I'm willing to do this. And this is one of my big things. Oh, you must have certified, do all this kind of stuff. Okay, But if I do the work and it's inspected, why should I have to be certified to do it as long as it inspects and passes? So, that's another question with all this stuff. You have to have licenses at the wazoo. This is really tough on small business, really tough. And all these things, I understand there's a problem. I mean, we used to put lead in the gas. You think paint's a problem? That's a big problem. All over the country, the ground's covered with, all kinds of lead, gasoline too. And that stuff doesn't go away either. So just a few thoughts on counties or governments getting involved with more regulations. It really burdens small businesses. You can have a big business hire one person because they can afford it, and if they sign off on it, they don't have to have people certified, so to call. They have one person. When you're a small business, you wear all the hats, you got to pay for it all, and it is not cheap. You get certified. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Natchez. Last call, public input on the motion. Hearing none. Sorry.
Mike Graham, Wisconsin Center Valley. When there's a problem with the structure, then I believe that the primary responsibility for paying for whatever is wrong with that structure is going to be whoever owns it, rather than trying to gather funds from all the taxpayers of all the state of Pennsylvania and then trying to dig it out to all these different places. The process of gathering all that money and then distributing it, much of that money is going to be wasted in all the bureaucracy that takes the portion of that money is going to get lost, and every set of hands it passes through is going to have to go all the way up to the state, and it has to filter all the way back down. And people are going to be in charge of distributing those funds, and those people are going to expect to be paid for their labor. And there's going to be all sorts of hidden costs that go along with that. We see what's happening with the cost of colleges. Way back when, it was far easier to be able to, go pay as you go kind of education in college. And then the government gets involved. Oh, we're going to make these student loans, and we're going to get all these grants. And what's happened to the admission fees and tuition costs at colleges? It keeps on going up. If we get involved with this where we're taking money throughout the state to pay for all these individual homes, it is going to go up. The cost estimates that you have now, fill those in trash, they're going to go up. And it always does when the government gets involved in it. You don't consider all the people that are going to have to be involved in this process of distributing all these funds. Every step of the way that those monies get transferred through, there's going to be a loss of money. Every step.
Could you identify yourself for the record, please? Sorry.
I did. Mike Grimm, Center Valley.
Excuse me?
Mike Grimm, Center Valley.
Mike Grimm, thank you.
Mr. Clerk, could you please take a roll call vote on the motion?
Commissioner Brace?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty?
No.
Commissioner Gramis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nothstein?
No.
Commissioner Hartzell?
Yes.
Commissioner Holt?
No.
Commissioner Osborne?
No.
And Commissioner Zanelli?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I recorded 5 votes in favor and 4 votes opposed.
Motion passes. Move right into the resolution, Mr. Clerk, resolution 2018-51, please.
Resolution 2018-51, approving a representation agreement with Anna Paul Weiss, sponsored by Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor, will you summarize?
By this resolution, the Board of Commissioners approves a representation agreement with Anna Paul Weiss to serve as counsel for the county for claims against Sherwin-Williams Company and L Industries, formerly known as National Lead Company. A copy of the proposed agreement and addendum thereto is attached as Exhibit A.
Thank you. Sponsor comments, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick for the public. So with this contract, Annabelle Weiss would assume if they get awarded, again, it's a big if, they're doing the work for no fees at this time for the county, they would get 33 1/3% plus expenses. The whole contract in regard is there's 9,023 homes, 52% are required to get mitigated for lead paint, and at this time, it's about $8,269 to remove the lead paint to mitigate that. Again, these are homes that were built before 1980, just for the record.
Is that all, Commissioner Brown?
Yes,
All right, thank you.
sorry.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Any public input? Commissioner Holmes?
On the contract itself, two things. One, under item G, it talks about the county reimbursing the provider for some costs. Can someone explain exactly what that means?
That's relating to the right to know provisions. And that is if there is a matter relating to right to know request in which there are costs incurred, I believe, by the provider in assisting the county in responding to a right to know request.
So the county's paying the provider for their help in complying with the right to know request, is what this is saying?
If they are required to produce, for example, documents in response to a request that the county does not have control over, we would probably, in accordance with the schedule of the Right to Know Office or the Office of Open Records in Harrisburg, pay them the fees that would be permissible under the statutory structure.
And then, under normal...
This is a normal provision in all our contracts, I believe.
Okay. Well, the difference here is that it was my understanding this wasn't going to cost the county, then I read that the county is reimbursing the provider, which sounds like it is going to actually cost the county something for that little portion of it. I'm not sure I fully understand exactly how that works, because I know right to know request has been a growing issue here at the county, and the volume and the time, the cost it takes. I would hate to see the county losing out on funds, if you will, because of that.
I'll respond. Upon executing the contract, any document between the county and my law firm would be privileged by attorney-client privilege, which would be outside of the right to know law. So that we would certainly respond to any right to know request that we got, obviously. However, to the extent that the right to know request requested documents that were otherwise privileged documents between, if you think of it as you as an individual having a relationship with an attorney, the attorney doesn't just simply turn over documents. In this case, the attorney could not, we are legally prohibited from turning over documents that fall within the scope of the attorney-client privilege.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments?
My second question was, where does it describe in the contract what happens? So let's say there is an award made. Where in the contract does it describe who controls those funds and what happens to those funds?
There's nothing in the contract that discusses that because, quite frankly, we, the attorneys, don't view that as sort of our place. We would certainly ask the court to decide how the funds should be distributed. The court, whoever the judge is, will have to determine how those funds are, what standards are going to be used in order to disperse those funds. It certainly would not be my law firm. We would, certainly provide guidance. We know what's done in other states, for example, in New Jersey, but that would certainly be up to the county once the award was received and paid by the defendant.
That's a question that we asked of the Director of General Services when the 911 litigation was brought to us. It's something that we would have to decide. Although the Director of General Services at that time made assurances to us related to that question.
Any other commissioner comments? Any public input? Mr. Clerk, would you please call a roll call vote
Yes.
Commissioner Dockery?
No.
Commissioner Gramis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nothstein?
No.
Commissioner Hartzell?
Yes.
Commissioner Holt?
No.
Commissioner Osborne?
No.
Commissioner Zanelli?
Yes.
And Commissioner Brace?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I recorded 5 votes in favor and 4 votes opposed.
The resolution moves forward. Moving along, resolution 2018-55. Mr. Clerk, would you introduce that resolution, please?
Resolution 2018-55, approving a professional services agreement with Forensic Pathology Associates at Division of Health Network Laboratories, LP, sponsored by Commissioner Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
By this resolution, the Board of Commissioners approves a professional services agreement with Forensic Pathology Associates. The purpose of the agreement is to provide autopsy and related services to the Office of the Coroner. The proposed agreement is attached to the resolution as Exhibit A. Resolution approval is required for professional service agreements in excess of $10,000 pursuant to Section 801.1 of the Administrative Code.
Thank you. Sponsor comments. Commissioner Osborne?
No further comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other commissioner comments? Any public input on the resolution? All those in favor of approving resolution 2018-55, please say aye.
Aye.
The resolution passes. Mr. Clerk, would you introduce the next resolution?
Resolution 2018-56, approving a professional services agreement with J.H. Gilbert Services LLC, sponsored by Commissioner Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
By this resolution, the Board of Commissioners approves a professional services agreement with J.H. Gilbert Services. The purpose of the agreement is to provide transport of bodies or remains for the Office of the Coroner. The proposed agreement is attached to the resolution as Exhibit A, and resolution approval is required because it is in excess of $10,000.
Sponsor comments. Commissioner Osborne?
No further comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other commissioner comments? Any public input? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2018-56, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Clerk, would you introduce the next resolution?
Resolution 2018-57, approving a professional services agreement with Wound Healing Solutions Pennsylvania and Delaware LLC, sponsored by Commissioners Hartzell and Gramis.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
By this resolution, the Board of Commissioners approves a professional services agreement with Wound Healing Solutions. The purpose of the agreement is to provide medically necessary wound care, clinical, and diagnostic services to the residents of Cedarbrook. Resolution approval is required because the agreement is in excess of $10,000.
Thank you. Sponsors, comments. Hartzell and Gravis? Commissioner Hartzell?
It's a very specialized medical service for our Cedarbrook residents. Wound healing, as I found out in a personal case with my family, can be very specialized, especially with people in this age category, and it is very important. And since this is a new contract with a current provider, I inquired as to any increase in the contract amount and was informed that they must accept whatever the Medicare rate is and no more. That's how these kind of contracts are structured. No direct cost to county taxpayers, although of course we're all paying for it, but they're very pleased with this provider.
Thank you. Commissioner Gravis, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would just like to say from personal experience, I've been a type 1 diabetic for 34 years. I know the importance of wound care and how long it takes for a wound to heal. I've experienced some problems on my own, and it's a very specialized field. And certainly as the population ages, it becomes more critical with a lot of underlying diseases. So I'm proud to co-sponsor this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gravis. Any other commissioner comments? Any public input? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2018-57, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Mr. Clerk, that brings us to the final resolution tonight. Would you introduce it, please?
Resolution 2018-58, approving an amendment to the professional services agreement with Visiting Nurse Association of St. Luke's Home Health and Hospice Incorporated, doing business as St. Luke's Hospice, sponsored by Commissioner Commissioner Prince.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
By this resolution, the Board of Commissioners approves an amendment to the professional services agreement with St. Luke's Hospice. The purpose of the agreement, or the amendment, is to provide routine hospital services to eligible residents of Cedarbrook. The amendment extends the agreement for 1 year and adds required language. The proposed amendment is attached to the resolution as Exhibit A, and resolution approval is required to amend a previously approved professional services agreement.
Sponsor comments, Commissioner Marshall?
Extension of an existing contract for another year, one of a handful of providers for this service for our Cedar Brook residents.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Grace.
I'm disclosing that I serve on the board of directors for St. Luke's Hospital in Allentown, which is part of the St. Luke's Health Network. And I don't serve on this particular board. I receive no financial gain serving on the board. Actually, I make contributions because I have to. So I see no reason to recuse myself, but I want the board and the public to know that I'm serving in that capacity.
Thank you, Commissioner Grace. Any other commissioner comments? Any public input? All those in favor of approving resolution 2018-58, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. We have one bill for consideration tonight. Mr. Clerk, would you introduce that bill?
Commissioner Bill 2018-27, approving a subrecipient grant to Treatment Trends Incorporated, sponsored by Commissioners Now.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
By this ordinance, the Board of Commissioners approves the subrecipient grant. The amount of the grant is $500,000 and is funded by the state as part of its strategy to improve opiate and substance abuse treatment. Treatment Trends was selected by the state to receive these funds. Ordinance approval is required pursuant to Section 610 of the Administrative Code.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor. Sponsor comments, Commissioner Snell.
As we discussed in the committee, this is essentially money that's coming from the state, and due to their regulations, simply getting funneled to the county before it goes to Treatment Trends, who the state has selected.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I worked with Treatment Trends, and I just want to say that congratulations to them being awarded for the $500,000. They do great work, so congratulations, Treatment Trends.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Any other commissioner comments? Any public input? Commissioner Bill 2018-27 had its first reading is scheduled for second reading, discussion, and vote at our next meeting. Moving on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports tonight? Commissioner Dougherty?
Yes, the Finance Committee has been holding hearings on the budget. We've had 3 hearings, and we're to the stage now where various commissioners are being asked to send in either their cuts or their additions or whatever they would like to see changed in the budget. So amendments to the budget are being requested for this Friday by 4 o'clock. And then once we have those in hand, we will be having a budget public hearing on Wednesday, October the 10th at 7:15. And then at the 7:30 meeting, we will be voting on those budget amendments. And then if we run overtime that night, we have Wednesday, October 17th, scheduled at 6 p.m. to continue voting if we need that. Hopefully, we won't need that extra time. And then on Wednesday, October the 14th, will be another public hearing on the amendments, so people can make comments, and then we'll have at 7:30 the second reading and vote on the budget. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dougherty.
Commissioners, if I could just add one item, just a little more detail on what Commissioner Dougherty noted. Friday at 4, I'll email all commissioners and the administration what amendments are being proposed. This will be a plain English statement. At that time, I'll then work with the fiscal office to make sure the proper line items are in place, and then we submit them to law for review, turn them all around and distribute them to the board following Friday with the rest of the package. If anyone has any questions along the way, please call.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Commissioner Bolt, again, committee report?
Yes. The administrative committee met in committee tonight to hear a strategic IT update. It was a good discussion. IT is doing a lot of wonderful things, including having their network praised for withstanding vulnerabilities in one of the highest ranking states. That's a really neat accomplishment. We also discussed how Human Services is making some technological improvements that are allowing them to perform their job more effectively, and those continue to be rolled out.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolt. Commissioner Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman Nothstein. I'm just going to ask our clerk if he could maybe expound a little bit on what you mean, which we all know what you mean, but there's people here in the audience who may not know what you mean about plain English.
Sure. When you amend the budget, the commissioner has to identify what line item they're removing the funds from, and then what line item those funds are going to, or vice versa. When you put those in form, it may not be very clear. In fact, it's typically not clear as to exactly what the change is being made. So that, to me, there's two pieces to amendment. On Friday, after collecting everyone's amendment, I'll have in plain English what's being done. And then I'll work with the other administrative offices and our law department to put that in a technical format, which if you land them up side by side, they might not necessarily match. So we always put out two sets, one that does the technical work to the amendment, and then one that you can read and just see, oh, I see, this is the change, the cut, the increase, the decrease that's being suggested.
Thank you, Commissioner Osborne. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any other committee reports? Any citizens input on committee reports? Any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Graham.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to say that this past Sunday, I delivered the resolution to former State Representative Joe Zeller. He was very pleased and indicated that he wanted me to pass on his congratulations, his thank yous. And he's as sharp as ever. If you run again, I think you win. And I also learned where Fitness Bridge is. It was within a football field's distance from his house. So I had a chance to drive over there on the way over. So once again, I think it was a great thing that we did for Joe. If you get a chance to check the East Penn Press, the Parkland Press, and Northwestern Press, and the Royal Catholic Press, his broad smiles on the front page. And you should all keep that copy up and see the good things that we did by passing that resolution and making comments. So,
thank you, Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Doherty.
Yes, I'd like to remind everybody that the County Commissioner Association of Pennsylvania meeting is going to be November 18th through 20th. And as we have found out in previous meetings, if you don't sign up early, you may not be able to get into the hotel. There's no room at the hotel, so you may have to drive excessively to get back. So if we get 4 people between the administration, so I hope the county executive is going, and I hope the solicitor goes also. But if we get 4 people signed up, one of them gets to go free.
Thanks for the
Commissioner Graham.
Mr. Chairman, when is our next meeting? In 2 weeks, as far as the board goes?
October 2nd.
Okay, so prior to that time, this is the elimination of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. Is that not correct?
October next, not this Saturday, next Saturday, 6:15 as I announced.
October 6th?
Yes, that's correct.
So, as a reminder to all those that we want to make sure we get attendance and we have a chance. And that Mr. Zellers will have a chance to participate in that ceremony. Okay. Thank you.
Any citizens input?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to announce for the commissioners, I know that Commissioner Osborne called and inquired about this, that Iman Jara, who is the other solicitor who sits here in this chair, had her baby last Tuesday. It's a little girl, and her name is Amelia.
Nice. Thank you for that. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.